to the EQ Fit podcast. Our mission is to equip people to prosper in every aspect of their life. Whether you're at home or in the workplace, we explore practical ways of improving success, satisfaction, finding balance, and building enjoyable and beneficial relationships. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the first in what I hope to be a long series of short version episodes in what I call EQ Fitness. EQ is the measure of emotional intelligence, and fitness speaks for itself. Are we emotionally fit? And there are so many benefits to being strong in emotional intelligence and in those skills. What I want to do is focus each of these shorter episodes on very specific topics. So let's go ahead and jump in. The first is going to be managing stress with emotional intelligence. The first thing we have to understand about managing stress is it comes from somewhere. And usually there are triggers that create stress in us. Now, those triggers may be things that have built up over a long period of time. So, for instance, every time you talk about your finances and they're not where you want them to be, then stress sets in. And one thing we need to understand about stress layers on top of itself. So you get some stress from here, from there, and it just starts to layer. We get so used to carrying that load of stress that every day, if we don't have healthy and productive ways to diminish that stress, it just continues to build to the point, literally, where it can break the camel's back, so to speak, where it just becomes too much for us. And then we have breakdowns. We do something or say something that we regret later, or maybe something even worse. So the first thing to know is, how do we identify those emotional triggers that lead to stress? And what I can say to you is, as soon as you identify you're feeling some additional stress, stop, look back, and see what happened to trigger that stress. And it's going to be before the emotion that you have. For instance, if you start talking about your finances and they're not where you want them to be, and then you have an emotion of insecurity or uncertainty, that's the emotional trigger. But the stimuli, the thing that caused that emotional trigger, is that area of your life or something that you experience that creates that emotion that then triggers stress. And remember, stress does layer on top of each other. So the first thing to do is to identify the emotional triggers, because if you can figure out what those are, you can then back up a little bit and say, what caused that emotion for me? Because you cannot control the emotion itself, but you can control what you do with it. Emotions and their intensity only last for about 6 seconds in our brains, and then they start to diminish unless we go and revisit that same emotion again and again by going back through this negative cycle. We think about finances, we feel insecure, we have that emotion of insecurity, and that creates stress. Which, do we go forward and try to do something about it? Or do we go back and think again about our finances and the insecurity it causes in that emotional driver, and then we add more stress to ourselves? So the first thing is to be able to identify those emotional drivers that really trigger stress in us. The second thing then is to start to practice something we call self-regulation. What is self-regulation? It is literally using specific skills of emotional intelligence. Things like navigating our emotions, which is taking our emotions and repurposing them for more productive and better outcomes. That's one really key element. Another is just to apply consequential thinking. Okay, wait a minute. I'm having this emotion. I'm getting stressed about it. What are the other options? Instead of staying, and here's another skill of emotional intelligence, recognizing patterns. Instead of staying in this pattern that continually cycles and creates more and more stress, how can I find an exit point? Instead of judgment and frustration and fear, how can I get to curiosity and excitement and courage? That's a wonderful process to use to start to reduce stress. One of the ways that we can actually practice this, and I think is very important, is practice mindfulness. Now, a lot of people, when I say mindfulness, they'll say, oh, that's weird, crazy stuff. No, it isn't. It's literally taking some time and allowing your brain to process what's going on, identify what's causing you stress, think through options, recognize patterns, navigate emotions. All of that has to be able to happen with enough margin in your brain for that process to work. If you're just trying to press through and you're just trying to do everything you can to run away or avoid the stress or whatever, it's just going to follow you. So mindfulness is taking the time to really let your brain assimilate what's going on, figure out what you can do about it, and then choose to move in the best possible direction. And part of that is going to come from the ability to be resilient. Where does resilience come from? Well, it comes from an optimistic mindset. So exercising optimism is another skill of emotional intelligence, along with another skill, which is called intrinsic motivation. When you have enough internal motivation, which comes from your deepest held values and beliefs, instead of some external factor that is very unreliable, like recognition or money or something else that you can't really count on, you can count on those things that you hold deeply inside yourself. So that's where resilience can be built. I call that an internal resource that you can use to fuel this stress reduction. And then we'll end this by saying, if we can identify the sources of stress and start reducing those, and it doesn't matter if this is in your life or in your work, we have to be able to face it. There's a phrase that I like to use called name it to tame it. If we can name the emotions and what they're doing to us, the impact they're having on us, we have an excellent opportunity to tame those emotions so that it doesn't have the same kind of impact that maybe it has had in the past. So this managing stress with emotional intelligence is a wonderful start to looking deeper into ourselves, being self-intelligent, and leveraging the things that each of us has to live a better life. If you'd like to go deeper on this topic and get specific action steps that will help you in your life and in your work, go to our website, eqfit.org, check out the blog article for the week of October 21st, 2024. The title will be Managing Stress with Emotional Intelligence. Thank you for joining us for this episode. If you have any questions about this week's episode, or maybe a suggestion for future episodes you'd like us to explore, please contact us through our website at eqfit.org. For more information and inspiration, connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube at EQ Fit.